My wife, Cindy, and I helped start the Monterey Manor Neighborhood Association in March 2017. We're just celebrating a one-year anniversary. We're fairly new to the Neighborhood Association-city relationship and are still learning the ins and outs of the neighborhood business. We had advantages and disadvantages when it came to starting our association. One of our disadvantages was that some residents in the neighborhood had unsuccessfully tried to start a neighborhood association about 8 to 10 years earlier, and that had left a sour taste in some people's mouths. The residents in the neighborhood had some confusion about HOAs and NAs, or neighborhood associations and homeowners associations. But after just 2 meetings and some re-education on that subject, it went much smoother. I found out that's not uncommon. There's a link on the city website explaining these differences, so I think it's an area that is commonly misunderstood. Our biggest advantage was that we had a common enemy. We had an entrepreneur come into our neighborhood and buy a single-family home with R1 zoning. He immediately filed a request for a O1 zone change, which is an office and institution zoning designation. This was totally unacceptable to our neighbors and our neighborhood. We had a liaison at the Neighborhood Association Department that could not have been more helpful in Vicente Covado. He was there every step of the way. He kept us in the loop concerning the process and the progress on the property that the developer was trying to get converted to O1 zoning in our neighborhood. And over time, Mr. Covado became our neighborhood ally. Mr. Covado informed us that if we had an official neighborhood association, it would create a more expeditious communication process, thus ensuring we would no longer be in a reactionary position in the future if other things were to be proposed regarding changes or variances in our neighborhood. He made sure our paperwork for the association was filled out properly, and he continued to stay in touch with us to check on the neighborhood association and make sure our fledgling association was doing okay. We appreciate the support from the city and especially Vicente. We found out we wanted to file a petition to show a majority of residents opposed the zoning change, so we brought the people to us. We distributed flyers to every house informing residents that we had scheduled a 2-hour window to gather signatures, and we would have a notary public present. So we set up tables on a corner in our neighborhood like a lemonade stand. We gathered 120 signatures in 2 hours. It worked out great. Resisting the zone change was the main issue that focused us as a neighborhood group, making it easier to convince residents that a neighborhood association would serve us well. You may have an issue in your neighborhood that would help bring more members to your neighborhood association. I was under the impression that I would be addressing people here that weren't members of the association or an association, but you are all aware of the process that is required to create the association, so I'm not going to go over that. But a few things you might find beneficial to bring in new members would be things like a quarterly newsletter or other events in your neighborhood as a barbecue or neighborhood night out, or creating interest for speed bumps or a neighborhood watch. We do a newsletter quarterly, and some do more and some do less. The city has many great programs available to your neighborhood association. The Office of Neighborhood Coordination puts out a weekly newsletter by Sarah Mancini, and that has great information and is a great resource for your neighborhood association for things like Walk the Block with Jill, which is one that we're going to do this spring. And what that is Jill, I'm not sure of her last name, is a police officer with APD, and she'll come and walk through your neighborhood and point out areas of concern that might be easily fixed or addressed to eliminate potential vandalism or break-ins, things like that. We also found out that at our police substation near our neighborhood, there's a parking spot for the sale or purchase of automobiles, which is monitored by cameras, and it's a wonderful lighted spot. And if you do a lot of Craigslist stuff, it can be a very safe place to make transfer of cash or items like that. The Neighborhood Association will protect you from entrepreneurs or developers like we had and informs you of any other action, both positive and negative. We're notified by the city via the association directly rather than a letter sent to residents with 100 feet of a property in question, which may or may not go any further than their front door. The entrepreneur literally told us he'd like to come into neighborhoods where there was no association and primarily populated by octogenarians because they are less resistant and easier to overcome. I think forming a neighborhood association gave us a stronger voice during the hearing we had with the City Planning Commission when fighting the developer and where he was trying to make changes to our zoning codes with a relatively small neighborhood of 132 residents. We had over 70 residents attend the meeting. I would recommend all neighborhoods have a neighborhood association, thereby creating a direct communication link with the city.